Hello friends, welcome back to another Manly Man tumbler. In this video, we're going to make a cool gaming tumbler. So I've got a lager cup here and I painted it black first and then decided I wanted to do a blue base. So I'm going to go right over that black with my Mediterranean blue acrylic paint. This is the Delta Creative Ceramcoat brand and you can get it at Joann's. So I'm just going to go over it kind of roughly. I'm definitely not looking for perfect full coverage here. We're going to use a kind of like paint chippy glitter in quotations on this. So your base doesn't really matter too much. It doesn't need to be perfect. If a little bit of the black shows through, that's okay. If we have blue showing through, that's okay too. So I'm just going to roughly paint this blue all over my tumbler. I'm going to let my paint dry for about an hour and then I'll be ready to apply my little paint chunks here. I don't like the term man glitter, so I'm not calling this man glitter. I think glitter is glitter. A girl boss is a regular boss. So I don't like the term man glitter, but you guys can call it whatever you want. So what I'm going to do is take my epoxy, and I'm using the Flynn Sisters Supply Shop Artist Cure epoxy for this process. And you can see I put quite a bit of it on my tumbler because this is such a chunky thing that we're going to put on the cup. We really want to make sure that the epoxy holds it, and I want to use a little bit more epoxy than I typically would for like a traditional glitter application because those little paint chip pieces are going to soak into the epoxy a little bit, and that's going to help everything lie flat and help prevent us from having to do 9,000 coats of epoxy on this to make sure everything is smooth. After I've got my cup covered, I'm going to take a gloved hand, and as you can see, I'm going to pat down all of those little pieces to make sure that they lie as flat as possible in that epoxy. Now you can also see here that I do not have perfectly full opaque coverage. This is okay. This is just the first layer of our design, so you don't need to worry about getting every single millimeter of your tumbler covered in these little paint chips. Just get as much on there as you can, pat them down, and we're going to layer a lot on top of this. So don't worry if you can't or don't get full coverage. Once my epoxy cures, I am going to seal this with my CRYSTALAC glitter glue and water mixture. Again, I want to make sure that this is lying as flat as possible to minimize the number of coats of epoxy we're going to have to do over this. So I'm going to do this with my big flat brush. You can get these brushes at Walmart or Michael's or Amazon. And I'm just going to brush my glitter glue and water mixture all over the tumbler. I'm going to let that dry for at least 2 hours, and then I'm going to add my first 2 coats of epoxy to the tumbler. I am using the Flynn Sisters Supply Shop Fast Cure epoxy for those 2 coats, so each one was about 30 milliliters, and I waited about 4 to 6 hours. So this is what the cup looks like after those 2 coats of epoxy, and you can see that it's pretty dang smooth. That's because we took all of those steps in the beginning to make sure that this step or this time in the design process was easier. So I did a little bit of sanding, washed the cup with dish soap and water, and now I'm going to clean up the top rim, and then we'll be ready to add our vinyl decals. Now, since this is a gaming tumbler, we're going to use video game controllers as our main decals. So I got this SVG on Creative Fabrica, and I just picked a controller that I thought was cool. I think this is a PlayStation controller, I don't know. So I cut out the background in black vinyl, and then I cut the outlines in white vinyl, and we're gonna layer them on top of each other to create a cool look. So what you can do if you wanted to customize this for somebody, you can pick this specific controller for whatever gaming console they like to use. You can put the specific game on there if you want to. There's endless options with this. I wanted to make this a little bit more simple and just generic so you guys can get your inspiration and ideas flowing. But yeah, you can customize this however you want to. with games and different consoles and all of that, the possibilities are endless. So this is what the controllers look like once they're all layered. Once they're layered, we can put them on our tumbler. Now I cut out a couple really big ones and then a couple smaller ones, and I'm just gonna place them randomly around my cup. I opted to go for a smaller number of larger controller decals versus a higher quantity and making the decals smaller, because I knew that I was going to go in with a kind of distressing paint technique around the controllers. I wanted to do fewer of them and just make them really large. I also wanted it to be easier to work with all of those super thin lines in the outline of the controllers. But of course, if you want to do just tons of tiny controllers or do a one big one, you can do whatever you want. I just chose to do a couple bigger ones. After the decals, I put another coat of epoxy on the tumbler. That coat was about 20 milliliters. And now I'm ready to go in and mask off all of my controllers so that we can do our distressed paint technique. So what I did was take that black layer of the SVG and I cut it out again in my stencil vinyl. And now I'm just going to apply that stencil vinyl right over our controllers to protect them from the paint. Now we are going to remove the majority of the paint that we put down, so if you wanted to just take a piece of painter's tape and like mask off a big section around the controllers, you can do that as well. But for me, it was just really easy to cut the stencils out and apply them, and then I went in with my paint. So what I did was a layer of sky blue paint, and then right after that, I went right over it with white paint, and that's what's giving us this kind of cool cloudy, like cellular weird effect. If you want to, you can do one coat of your colored paint, let it completely dry, and then go in with your white paint over it, and that's going to give you a more solid opaque look. And then when you do your distressing, that color underneath will start to fade through as you remove your paint. But I wanted to have a little bit of a different look here, so I just layered them one after the other without letting them dry in between. So now that my paint is dry, I'm going to go in and remove all of the stencil vinyl, and then we can start our distressing process. Now I have done a few distressed paint tutorials on my channel before, so I'm going to go over this really quickly. But what I'm doing here is using my acetone and my rubbing alcohol on a towel, and I've got a glove on my hand so I don't get acetone or anything on my hands. And as you can see, I'm just going to go through and scrub off all of the paint from around the controllers and kind of all over the cup just as I see fit. I want to keep a little bit of paint on here, but I want to also show a lot of those paint chips underneath. So it's just going to be a delicate balance of paint and paint chips, and I'm just going to go through and remove as much paint as I feel is necessary. So for you, that could be most of it. You could leave a lot of paint and just show a little bit through. Really just do whatever you think is best for your design and how your cup is looking. If you don't want to do this distressing step at all, you also don't have to if you don't want to. You guys can do whatever you want. As I always say, do what makes you happy. So with distressing, the general rule is that your acetone is going to remove the bulk of your paint and the rubbing alcohol is going to kind of clean things up. So the rubbing alcohol is going to get rid of any paint residue that's left on the areas where you removed the paint with the acetone and just kind of make things look a little bit cleaner. But if you want to get rid of a lot of paint, you're going to want to use the acetone. So what I'm doing is just using different spots on my towel, acetone, and then putting rubbing alcohol on a different area of my towel. You can see my towel has really been through it. This is my paint towel. So I'm just going to go through, continue getting rid of as much paint as I feel necessary, and then we'll be ready to move on to our next step. Okay, so I made a mistake on this cup and I'm going to show you guys how I fixed it because we all make mistakes and I want to keep stuff like this in my videos because that's how we all learn. So when I was walking around with this cup, taking it out to my shed to epoxy it, I ran into my table and I bumped it and this big chunk of epoxy came out. So what I did first was do an ice test to make sure that the seal on the tumbler was not broken. So the ice stayed icy and everything was good. So we can continue on with our design and just fix this and move on and pretend it never happened. But if the seal was broken, I would have had to start over with a brand new cup because that basically means that the cup is not good anymore. So everything's well with the ice. So we're going to fix this little dent in our epoxy. I'm going to use UV resin and I'm going to put a little bit of it into the well where the crack happened to fill it in and make it smooth again. And then I'm going to cure that in front of my lamp, then go outside and add another regular coat of epoxy over it to make sure that everything is totally smooth. And then I'm going to cover this up with a little bit more distressed paint. What I'm going to do for the distressed paint on this next layer is use some white acrylic paint because I wanted to have a little bit of a differentiation between the first layer of distressing that we did and this new layer. So I'm using a little bit of just a brighter white that's obviously not mixed in with blue. This is just going to add another layer of dimension, give us a little bit of texture, and cover up our boo-boo. So what I'm doing here is adding random little spots of that white acrylic paint all over the tumbler, of course, to camouflage the one spot that I had to fix and make it look like it was all part of the plan from the very beginning. So I'm just going to go in with the same distressing technique that we did for the layer underneath, just kind of rough these spots up a little bit and make them look all blended in. Once that's done, we can add our final coat of epoxy and this cup will be all done. So here is the final tumbler design. I'm so glad I was able to finish this one even after my mistake, and I think it turned out really cool. I do have some things that I would do differently if I were to remake this type of design, so you might see something similar on my channel in the future. Let me know if that's something you'd like to see. I am working on a remaking old tumbler designs full series, not just random ones scattered around my channel here and there. So again, let me know if that's something you want. And if you like the video, you know the drill, be sure to give it a thumbs up down below. Subscribe to my channel if you are not already, and I will see you all in my next video. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Love you. Bye. Hello friends, thanks so much for watching this video. I want to say a huge special thank you to my elite fam, my channel members, and my subscribers. You all make this channel possible, so thank you so much for being part of the fam. If you want more exclusive content from me, you can join my elite fam at patreon.com/elitefam. You can find my tumblers and digital files on my website madebymalstudio.com. And if you'd like to follow me on social media, you can find me on Instagram at madebymal_studio. Here's another video for you to check out, and I'll see you soon. Thanks so much for watching. Love you. Bye.